In the last video, we talked about the system underneath the pattern. If you missed that video, you can watch it right here. Your focus goes somewhere, then you make that focus mean something. That meaning shifts your state. Your state changes the choices that then feel available, and then the action you take creates evidence that either reinforces the old pattern or starts to build a new one. So the obvious next question is, what do I actually do with that? Because it's one thing to understand the pattern after the fact. It's another thing to have more access to yourself in the middle of the stress. That's really what this whole series has been building toward. The goal isn't just to understand why your business feels stressful, and it's not just to get better at naming the pattern, and it's definitely not just to pretend that the pressure isn't real. The goal is to build the capacity to lead yourself inside the pressure of the thing that you're creating. This is where freedom starts to become possible again. Growing your business doesn't just suddenly become easy. There's still going to be some ups and some downs. Freedom inside your business can't depend on everything outside of you cooperating perfectly. Because if that's the requirement, then freedom is always waiting on the conditions you don't fully control in the first place. So instead, we want to create freedom through increased capacity. Increased capacity means you have more command over your focus, your perspective, and your actions. And consequently, your energy and effort are directed towards what you can actually influence instead of just leaking into everything that's outside of your control. You learn how to shift out of that confined state where everything feels urgent, unobtainable, and way too personal. And you learn how to move back towards a freer state where you have more access to the higher capabilities of your mind. And from here, you can see more options again. You can think more clearly. You stop seeing just landmines and everything that could go wrong, and instead you start noticing the possibilities, the creative solutions, and what tools and resources are still available. And this doesn't just improve how your work feels, it improves the quality of your work as well. Because when you're less hindered by stress, you have less tunnel vision, less urgency and self-judgment and potential threats. You have more access to creativity, to leadership, to communication, and you're just more able to take really effective action. That directly changes how you show up and how productive your effort becomes. I'll give you an example that isn't really a business example at first, but I think it makes the pattern really easy to see. The other day I was rock climbing and I was lead rope soloing. That means I was climbing with a rope, but I didn't have a belay partner. So I was managing the rope system myself while also climbing. It can be riskier than regular lead climbing because there's just more you have to do and more you have to manage. And I got to a hard section of the route. There was a roof, which means I had to leave the comfort of having my feet underneath me and lean back and really rely on these small holds. And I could feel myself starting to shift into confined state. My legs started shaking, my vision narrowed, and my mind wasn't working as clearly. I could feel the stress and the fear of falling start to take over, and my whole body started to get tense in a way that wasn't actually helping me climb. The fear wasn't random. The risk wasn't fake. And it's not like I was making up the fact that falling mattered. But the way I was responding to the risk was starting to make me less capable of handling the risk. When my whole body got tense, my movement got awkward. And it got less fluid, less efficient, less adaptable, and it was less mobile. And I was using a lot of energy. But I wasn't using it in a way that was actually helping me move through that section of the climb. And because my fight or flight response was becoming activated, I started to sweat more than usual, noticeably in my hands. Can you see the problem with having sweaty hands while climbing? If I'd stayed in that state, eventually I probably would have fallen. Not necessarily because the route was impossible, but because I would have burned too much energy fighting the reality of the route instead of using what was actually there. So I slowed down and I found a good resting spot. Then I recentered myself and regained control of my three powers: focus, meaning, and action. I had to deliberately stop wasting mental energy on the things I couldn't control. I couldn't control how good the holds were. I couldn't control where they were. And I couldn't control the shape of the route or the sequence that was in front of me. What I could do was bring my focus back to the holds that were actually there and figure out how to use them better. What moves could help me the most as I move upwards? I didn't even narrow my search to what were the best or the deepest or the biggest holds, just which could help me move onwards? How should I hold it? What body position makes me more stable? Where do I actually need tension? And where is tension wasting energy? And when I did that, everything shifted. The route didn't get any easier or shorter, and the holds didn't get any deeper or bigger. But by changing what I focused on and how I chose to interpret them, my subjective and my objective experience changed. It felt different. It was enjoyable and fun again. And I was literally more capable and could climb better. Instead of being tense almost everywhere, I could keep tension where I needed it and relax where tension was just exhausting me. I could pull with one part of my body while relaxing another. I could push with my leg, shift my position, and use the hold more intelligently and move in a way that was more adaptable and efficient. The route didn't change, nor did the holds, and the risk of falling didn't go away, but the likelihood of me falling drastically decreased. What changed was that I stopped judging the holds for not being what I wanted them to be, and I started looking at them more objectively. I stopped spending energy on these holds should be better. And I stopped asking questions that focused on what was wrong and what wouldn't help me. And I shifted my questions to help me focus on what was available and what could help me. What's actually here? Which hold is useful? How do I use it? Where do I need to position my body? What's the next move that helps me move through this section? That's the shift from confined state to free state. It's not pretending the hard thing isn't hard. It's having more access to yourself while the hard thing is still hard. And the same thing happens in business. Things are going great. You're building and growing, and then you get to a make it or break it situation. Because you're smart and super aware, you recognize the importance of this moment. But that's a double-edged sword, because now you feel the potential threat that this business decision or this sales pitch actually is. If you don't do things just right, you could fall. The risk is real. But that's all the more reason to stay in the right headspace, because that's where you're going to be most capable of conquering these important moments. When I was climbing, the solution wasn't to ignore the fact that I could fall. I had to acknowledge the potential enough to recognize, okay, I need to bring it together. I need to lock in. I need to focus on what I can actually do right now. The same thing is true in business. If leads aren't good, pretending they're amazing doesn't help you. Or if the campaign failed, pretending it secretly worked also doesn't help you. That's just straight delusional. You can't fake your way to a good headspace. Your brain is way smarter than that. So we know we shouldn't just focus on all the bad, unhelpful things. And we also know we shouldn't just pretend that everything's fine and dandy. So what do we do instead? We do the same thing that I did when I was climbing. Slow down, take some deep breaths, recenter yourself, and then start with your focus. Focus on what's in your control. And then choose a perspective, a meaning that helps you move forward. So instead of wasting energy judging those sales leads for not being what you wanted them to be, you can ask, how can I use this connection? Is there someone they could introduce me to? Is there a different way we could collaborate? Is there another product, service, or next step that would make more sense for this person? Yes, they didn't start off the way that you wanted them to be. When I was climbing, there was a hold that looked really solid and deep. But when I got to it, I realized I couldn't pull down on it to help me move upwards. But because I shifted my focus and chose to see it as still helpful, I realized I could pull on it sideways, which allowed me to push off of my left foot and pendulum myself up and to the right. If I'd stayed locked in and rigid in my thinking, then that hold can never help me. But by shifting my focus, I became more capable. So instead of trying to force a business relationship to become something it isn't, and then judging yourself or judging the situation when it doesn't become what you wanted it to be, you can start looking for how that relationship might still create value. Maybe it becomes a referral or a future collaboration opportunity. Maybe they can offer you feedback on why they didn't purchase from you. And now you're more capable of succeeding. Same thing with a failed marketing campaign. In confined state, the campaign not working becomes, this is bad, I wasted money, I don't know what I'm doing. This strategy isn't working. But in free state, you can shift your focus and pick a different perspective by asking the question, what did this campaign show me? Did people not understand the offer? Was the audience wrong? Was the hook weak? Is there a piece of data here that helps me improve the next campaign? That doesn't necessarily make the failed campaign fun, but it does make it useful. And that's a huge difference. Same thing with your schedule. If your calendar is packed and another important opportunity shows up, confined state says, I can't handle this, I'm trapped, everything's too much, I should be able to do this, why can't I keep up? But when we're in free state, we can ask ourselves, is there something I need to drop so I can make room for this better opportunity? That's a very different question. When I was climbing that route, I had to do the same thing. I had to let go of a good hold down here in order to grab this other hold up here. Letting go of something good can be scary. But when we're not consumed by the risk of falling, we give ourselves permission to move upwards. Sometimes increasing our capacity doesn't mean just doing more. Sometimes capacity is having enough access to yourself to recognize what you need to let go of so you can move toward the thing that helps you even more. People think freedom means there's no pressure, but pressure can be present without taking over your focus, your meaning, your behavior, and then consequently, your internal state and your identity. And that means when the holds in front of you aren't what you wanted them to be, you can stop using all your energy wishing they were different. And instead, you start using your energy to figure out how to move forward with what's actually there. That's increased capacity. And that's how you have more command over the internal process that creates your experience and your behavior. Your focus is more available to you. Your perspective is more beneficial and your actions become more potent. You're not leaking as much energy into things outside of your control. And because of that, you get more access to the parts of your mind that actually help you build the business well. A lot of the time, the thing that's holding you back isn't just the external situation. It's the lens you're using to interpret the situation. There's something I didn't share with you about my rock climbing example. I was always capable of climbing that route without falling, but yet I got in my head about it and I got scared. The last time I was climbing in that canyon, I was climbing with a friend. And while he was climbing on a similar route on the same type of rock, he took a really big fall. Flipped upside down, smacked his head against the wall, and almost hit the ground. Even though I wasn't the one who took the fall, it still affected me. It made it harder to stop focusing on the risk of falling, and instead my focus kept defaulting to what could go wrong. That's natural. Our brain wants to avoid pain, even if it's just potential threat of pain. Starting and building your own business is no different. There's risk, and your brain wants to avoid that risk. So it adopts these limiting beliefs along the way so it can try to protect us. If the mental belief, also called a map, says, if this launch doesn't work, I'm not good enough, then launching will feel threatening because it's trying to push us away from the risk of not being good enough. So of course we end up avoiding the launch. The most guaranteed way to never fail is to just never try. But it also means you're guaranteed to never succeed. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're in it to succeed. So now you just have to figure out how to fully do it and how to do it well. Because if you let that belief run rampant in your mind, you're either never going to get on the wall or you're going to tense up as soon as the real risk shows up. And I think we can both agree that letting that fear take over your mind drastically lowers your chances of succeeding. So part of your work as an entrepreneur is learning to recognize those maps and then reframe them. But you don't just try to drown that fear with fake positivity. A useful reframe doesn't deny reality. It gives you a more accurate and more useful way to respond to reality. So instead of, if this launch doesn't work, I'm not good enough, the reframe might be, this launch gives me feedback. It shows me what needs to change next. It doesn't decide my worth, and it doesn't decide in one moment whether I'm capable of building something successful. Instead of, these leads aren't good, so I'm stuck, the reframe might be, these leads may not become buyers in the way I expected, but there may still be information, connection, a referral, or just learning here that helps me move forward. That kind of reframing changes the actions available to you. Can you see how that focus and that interpretation of the situation makes you a more capable entrepreneur, and how it expands your available options? Because when the meaning changes, your state changes. And when your state changes, your options change. And when your options change, your actions change. And when your actions change, the evidence that you build starts to change too. That's why this isn't just about feeling better. It's about performing better, creating better, and using your effort more effectively. When you're in confined state, you might still be working hard, but a lot of your effort gets burned up in resistance and fear, judgment, and trying to control outcomes that aren't fully yours to control. But in free state, effort becomes more efficient. You're going to have to work hard either way. But when you're operating in free state with more access to your powerful brain, your effort is more directed towards the places where it can actually make a difference. That's why we created the Live Free protocol. Because this isn't just a concept to understand once and then be done with it. It's something that has to be practiced. You have to learn how to notice when you're shifting into confined state. You have to learn how to catch where your focus is going and what meaning is taking over and what map is running. Then you have to learn how to reframe the map, redirect the focus and shift back towards a freer state so you can take the right actions enough times that the new pattern becomes the default, even when the pressure hits an all-time high. Like with any skill, you practice it until it becomes natural. Insight by itself can feel powerful, but if it's not trained into your real-time response, it doesn't matter. It's those exact moments of high stress that you need that skill the most. That's what Live Free is built to help with. It helps you work with the internal patterns, the meanings, the maps, the states, and the responses that keep shaping how you show up. So you're not just trying to force better behavior from the same old place. You're building the capacity to operate from a freer state more often. And that's what starts to create a real sense of freedom, mastery of your internal state, and the increased capacity to create the life you want. That's the difference between dragging your feet every day and genuinely, truly loving your work. Or the difference between putting in countless hours but never seeing results and putting in really effective work and seeing solutions and growth finally show up. And if this is the kind of struggle you're ready to work through, the next step is to book a discovery call. The call isn't about diagnosing you as a person, and it's not about giving you another productivity hack. It's simply a conversation about whether Live Free is the right fit for what you're struggling with and whether the program can help you take the next best step. So if you recognize this pattern in yourself, if the business you built for freedom has started to feel like it's owning more of your internal state than you want it to, and if you're ready to stop relying on pressure, shame, or grit as your main strategy, you can book a discovery call using the link in the caption below. If you have any questions, please share them in the comments section. I do read all of them myself and I respond as quickly as I can.